wind no longer caressed Niverix's feathers, because there were no feathers left to caress. Where magnificent silver-blue wings had once extended proudly from her back, only jagged scars remained, a permanent reminder of the tribunal's judgment. 5 solar cycles had passed since her punishment, since they had stripped a high-ranking Avorial of her birthright and exiled her to the backwater planet known as Earth. "Finish your drink or pay for another hour," growled the bartender, a burly human with arms covered in image markings they called tattoos. Niverix glanced at her half-empty glass of amber liquid. Whiskey, the humans called it. It burned her throat, but numbed the phantom pain where her wings should be. The dingy establishment reeked of spilled alcohol and human sweat, yet it had become her sanctuary in this world of gravity and limitations. "I said," the bartender began again. "I heard you the first time," Niverix snapped, her translator implant conveying her irritation perfectly. She downed the remainder of her drink in one gulp, the burning sensation traveling from her throat to her stomach. Once, she had soared through the crystalline skies of Luminar, commanding respect as chief navigator of the celestial fleet. Now, she was just another strange foreigner in a human city, her species unrecognizable to Earth's inhabitants, who remained blissfully unaware of the vast galactic community beyond their atmosphere. The crime that cost Niverix her wings wasn't truly a crime at all. She had revealed corruption within the Avorial High Command, exposing how they had sabotaged first contact with 3 developing worlds, including Earth. The official charge was endangering species, isolation protocols, but everyone knew the truth. She had threatened the powerful. "Last call," the bartender announced to the nearly empty room. Outside, rain pelted the streets of Nova Seattle, the first human city built after the pulse, an electromagnetic phenomenon that had forever changed Earth's technology. Humans thought it was a natural disaster. Niverix knew it was the Avorial High Command's doing, a calculated setback to delay human advancement. As she stepped into the rain, her shoulder blades ached where her magnificent wings had once connected. 14 feet of aerodynamic perfection that had carried her through nebulae and solar storms. The neural paths in her brain still fired uselessly, attempting to adjust wings that no longer existed. A hover cycle roared past, splashing dirty water onto her worn synth leather jacket. The rider didn't stop to apologize. Typical human rudeness, she thought bitterly. Yet something about the rider caught her attention. He moved with unusual grace, handling the primitive machine as if it were an extension of himself. Niverix trudged through the puddles toward her rented room above a noodle shop. The small space was all she could afford with the meager universal credits the tribunal had generously allowed her to keep. Tomorrow she would try again to find work, any work, that didn't require identification she didn't have. She rounded a corner and froze. 3 figures blocked her path, their faces obscured by rain and shadow. "Well, look what we found," said the tallest one, stepping forward, an off-worlder, all alone. Niverix tensed. Without her wings, she had lost more than flight. She had lost her primary means of defense. The genetic modifications that gave Avorials their strength were concentrated in their wing muscles. "I have nothing of value," she said flatly. The figures moved closer. "That's not true," said a second voice. "Those implants in your neck would fetch a good price on the black market." Niverix's hand instinctively moved to her throat, where her translator and atmospheric adaptation implants were embedded. Without them, she couldn't breathe Earth's air or communicate. "I wouldn't do that," came a new voice from behind the trio. The hover cycle rider stood there, water dripping from his helmet. 3 against 1 isn't very sporting." "Mind your business, Caspian," snarled the tall one. "Can't do that, Drell," the rider Caspian replied. "Not when you're threatening someone on my route." As tension crackled between them, Niverix realized that for the first time since her wings were taken, someone on this forsaken planet was willing to stand up for her. A human, of all species. The confrontation ended not with violence, but with grudging retreat. Drell and his companions slunk, away into the rain-soaked alleyways of Nova Seattle, leaving Niverix face to face with her unexpected defender. "You shouldn't be in this district after midnight," said Caspian, removing his helmet to reveal features that were striking even by human standards: sharp cheekbones, eyes that appeared almost gold in the streetlight, and a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. "I don't need saving," Niverix replied, her pride still intact despite everything she had lost. Caspian's lips curled into a half-smile. "Everyone needs saving sometimes." He gestured to his hovercycle. "Let me give you a ride home. Drell and his crew will be back once I'm gone." Niverix hesitated. In her former life, she had commanded ships that could traverse galaxies. Now she was being offered transport on a primitive vehicle by a species her people had deliberately kept in technological infancy. "Fine," she conceded, not out of trust but practicality. The hovercycle hummed to life beneath them, its anti-grav technology surprisingly sophisticated for Earth. As they navigated the rain-slicked streets, Niverix noticed modifications to the machine that shouldn't exist in human hands. "This isn't standard Earth technology," she stated rather than asked. Caspian accelerated through an amber light. "You're not the only non-human in Nova Seattle." They arrived at her building, the neon sign of the noodle shop below casting a red glow over them. Niverix dismounted awkwardly, still unaccustomed to the shifting balance of her wingless body. "Thank you for the transportation," she said formally. "Caspian River." He introduced himself, extending a hand in the human custom. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. "Niverix." "Just Niverix?" "Among your kind, yes." He nodded as if this explained everything. "You need work, don't you? No off-worlder lives above Madame Joe's unless they're down to their last credits." Niverix stiffened. "My financial situation is not your concern." "It could be," Caspian replied, pulling a worn card from his jacket. "I run a courier service. Specialized deliveries. I could use someone who knows their way around different technologies." Niverix examined the card. River Expedited Solutions was printed above an address in the warehouse district. "Why would you offer employment to a stranger?" she asked, suspiciously. "Because you're not the first exile I've met," he said simply. "And in my experience, those who've lost the most often have the most to offer." Before she could respond, Caspian's communicator beeped. He checked it and frowned. "I have to go. Job came in. If you're interested, come by tomorrow." He replaced his helmet and was gone in a blur of light and sound. Inside her small room, Niverix placed the card on her sparse desk. The space was functional at best: a bed, a desk, a chair, and a small cooking unit. In one corner sat her most precious possession: a holographic projector containing the only image she had of her homeworld. She activated it, and the room filled with the crystalline spires of Luminar's capital. Her throat tightened at the sight of Avorials soaring between the buildings, their wings catching the light of twin suns. Niverix had no illusions that she would ever return. The tribunal's judgment was final. Her wings removed, her citizen status revoked, her very identity erased from Avorial records. She was, in every sense that mattered to her people, dead. Yet here was a human, a being from a species her own kind had deliberately hindered, offering her a chance at something resembling a life. The next morning found Niverix standing outside, a warehouse in Nova Seattle's industrial zone. The building looked unremarkable, but the security system that scanned her was anything but standard Earth technology. The door slid open to reveal not just Caspian, but a workspace filled with technology from at least 3 different galactic civilizations. A Mrethi fluid computer bubbled in one corner. A Darzani phase shifter occupied another. In the center stood a Terrellian transport platform, all devices that shouldn't exist on Earth. "Welcome to River Expedited Solutions," said Caspian. "Where? We deliver anything anywhere, even to places that officially don't exist." The warehouse wasn't merely a base of operations, it was a nexus of forbidden exchanges. As Caspian guided Niverix through the facility, she recognized technology from a dozen worlds: some so advanced that even her own people treated them with reverence. "How did you acquire a Merethi fluid computer?" she asked, unable to contain her astonishment. "The Merethi don't trade with anyone outside their collective." Caspian's smile was cryptic. "Let's just say not all Merethi agree with their leadership's isolationist policies." Two other figures worked at various stations, a tall, lanky human with intricate circuitry visibly embedded in his forearms, and a being Niverix immediately recognized as Centaurian, though they wore a hooded garment that concealed their distinctive facial ridges. "My team," Caspian explained. "Elian handles our tech." He gestured to the augmented human. "And Vox is our strategist." The Centaurian nodded, but remained silent. "And what would I be?" Niverix questioned. "Our navigator," Caspian replied. "Someone who knows the stars not just as points of light, but as routes and pathways." Niverix felt a painful twinge where her wings had been. "I was once chief navigator of the Celestial Fleet," she admitted. "But that life is gone." "The knowledge remains," Caspian countered. "And knowledge is precisely what we need." He led her to a holographic projection table that flickered to life, displaying a three-dimensional map of Earth's solar system. With a gesture, he expanded it to show nearby star systems, a map surprisingly accurate for human technology. "We've been making deliveries in-system for years," Caspian explained. "Supplies to the Martian colonies, equipment to the asteroid mining operations. All official, all legitimate, but lately we've had other requests." He manipulated the display, focusing on a point beyond Neptune's orbit. 3 months ago, something arrived at the edge of our system. The governments are keeping it quiet, but it's some kind of vessel or station, not human-made. Niverix studied the anomaly. "That's an Ivorial observation post," she said without hesitation. "Specifically, a Sentinel-class monitoring station. They're used to track developing worlds." Elian looked up from his workstation. "You're certain?" "I helped design the modern versions," Niverix replied. "This appears to be an older model, but the configuration is unmistakable." Vox finally spoke. Their voice a melodious, multi-tone sound filtered through a translator similar to Niverix's. "Then you confirm what we suspected. Earth is under surveillance." "It has been for centuries," Niverix stated flatly. "The Ivorial High Command has special interest in several developing worlds. They monitor, they observe, and occasionally, they intervene." "Like the pulse?" Caspian asked quietly. Niverix's eyes widened slightly. "You know about that?" "We've pieced things together. The electromagnetic event that destroyed much of Earth's electronics 20 years ago wasn't natural, was it?" She hesitated, then answered, "No. It was a calibrated setback. Human technology was advancing too quickly. The High Command feared you would achieve interstellar capability within decades." The room fell silent as the humans absorbed this revelation. "And this is why you were exiled?" Elian asked. "Because you opposed this interference?" "I exposed it," Niverix corrected. "I discovered that certain members of the High Command were not merely observing Earth, but actively manipulating its development for personal gain. They had investments in competing species, technological patents that would become worthless if humans advanced too quickly." Caspian's expression hardened. "And for telling the truth, they took your wings. And my identity, my citizenship, my future," Niverix added. "They exiled me to the very world I tried to protect, knowing I would be stranded among a species that has no knowledge of life beyond their atmosphere." Vox moved closer to the holographic display. "What if you weren't stranded?" All eyes turned to the Centaurian. "Explain," Caspian prompted. "We've been developing something," Vox continued, looking to Elian, who nodded permission. "A ship, small, but capable of interstellar travel, built from scavenged and reverse-engineered components." Elian pulled up schematics on a nearby screen. "We're close, but the navigation systems have been our biggest hurdle. We can build the engines, but plotting safe courses through space-time without established beacons or gates is beyond our capabilities." Niverix studied the designs with growing amazement. The craft was crude by Ivorial standards, but ingenious in its adaptation of disparate technologies. "This shouldn't be possible," she murmured. "Humans shouldn't have access to quantum displacement engines or phase shift technology." "And yet, here we are," Caspian said. "The question is, Niverix, will you help us complete it? Will you be our navigator once more?" The following weeks transformed Niverix. Each morning she arrived at the warehouse before anyone else, losing herself in the intricacies of navigation systems and star charts. The ache where her wings had been remained, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of purpose, something she hadn't felt since her exile. The ship, which they had named Defiance, took shape in a hidden hangar beneath the warehouse. It was smaller than any interstellar vessel Niverix had commanded, barely large enough for 4 passengers, but its ingenious design incorporated technology from half a dozen worlds. "How did you acquire a Thalassian resonance core?" she asked Elian one evening as they calibrated the navigation array. "Even among my people, such technology is rare." Elian's cybernetic implants glowed faintly as he worked. "Caspian has connections. People who believe Earth shouldn't be kept isolated. Sympathizers from other worlds? And exiles like yourself," Elian confirmed. "Not everyone agrees with the policies of their governments." As they worked, Niverix learned more about her human colleagues. Elian had been a conventional engineer before the Pulse. In the aftermath, he had been among the first to discover pieces of non-terrestrial technology in the wreckage, components that had been secretly installed in Earth's satellite network and were destroyed in the event. Vox had arrived 3 years ago, a political refugee seeking asylum after a coup on Centauri Prime. Their astronomical knowledge had been crucial to understanding the signals they now intercepted from the observation post beyond Neptune, and Caspian, he remained the greatest enigma. He moved with the confidence of someone who had traveled between worlds, yet he was undeniably human. His knowledge of off-world technologies exceeded what should have been possible for someone from a quarantined planet. "You're staring again," Caspian noted one day as he assisted her with the installation of a navigation console. Niverix hadn't realized she was. "I'm trying to understand you." "Simple enough. I'm a guy who delivers packages." "No human should know what you know," she pressed, "or have access to the technology you possess." Caspian was quiet for a moment, his hands continuing to work efficiently. "My parents were scientists," he finally said. "They were investigating anomalous signals when the pulse hit. Their research station was directly in the path of the strongest electromagnetic wave." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a lattice of fine, silvery scars that Niverix immediately recognized as contact burns from Ivorial energy weapons. "They died," he continued. "But before they did, my mother managed to shield some of their findings, records of communications they had intercepted, transmissions not from Earth. And you've been searching for answers ever since," Niverix surmised. Caspian nodded. "For 20 years, finding others who had pieces of the puzzle, building this network, and now finding you, someone who can confirm what we've suspected." Their eyes met, and Niverix felt an unfamiliar sensation, a connection that transcended species and backgrounds. In Caspian's determination, she recognized her own drive for truth, regardless of consequence. The moment was interrupted by an urgent call from Vox. "The observation post has changed position," the Centaurian reported. "It's moving closer to Earth." They gathered around the monitoring station. The Ivorial observation post had indeed altered its orbit, positioning itself where it could deploy smaller craft toward Earth undetected by human tracking systems. "This isn't standard procedure," Niverix explained, unease growing within her. "Observation posts maintain fixed positions unless..." "Unless what?" Elian prompted. "Unless they're preparing for direct intervention." The implications hung heavy, in the air. If the Ivorial High Command was planning another intervention like the Pulse, the consequences for humanity could be devastating. "We need to accelerate our timeline," Caspian decided. "How close are we to launch capability?" Elian ran diagnostics. "The Defiance can fly, but without complete navigation protocols, we'd be limited to this system." All eyes turned to Niverix. I can complete the navigation systems within a week, she stated. But reaching the observation post is only the beginning. What do you intend to do when we arrive? Caspian's expression hardened with resolve. We're going to find out exactly what they're planning, and then we're going to stop it. In that moment, staring at these humans and their impossible ship, Niverix realized that though her wings were gone, she had found something she never expected on this primitive world. Allies who fought against the same injustice she had sacrificed everything to expose. Night fell over Nova Seattle as the Defiance rose silently from its underground hangar. The ship's adaptive camouflage rendered it nearly invisible against the cloud-covered sky, one of many features that Niverix had helped perfect. They ascended rapidly, bypassing commercial flight paths and military radar with technology that shouldn't exist on Earth. In the navigation chair, specially designed to accommodate her wingless form, Niverix felt a bittersweet familiarity. Her fingers moved across holographic controls, plotting their course beyond Earth's atmosphere. Once she had commanded vessels that dwarfed this small craft, but never had a journey felt more significant. Approaching orbital boundary, she announced, transitioning to spaceflight configuration. The cabin hummed as the Defiance's external structure reconfigured, shedding its atmospheric components in favor of the sleeker profile needed for vacuum travel. Earth diminished behind them, a blue-white sphere wrapped in the delicate lacework of human satellites and stations. 7 days to reach the observation post at current velocity, Fox noted from the communication station. Caspian, in the pilot's seat, shook his head. Too long. They could implement whatever they're planning before we arrive. We could attempt a short phase jump, Elian suggested hesitantly. The engines are untested at that level, but theoretically. Niverix considered the risks. Phase jump technology allowed vessels to briefly exist out of conventional space-time, covering vast distances in moments. It was dangerous even in properly engineered avoreal ships. In this hybrid craft, built from scavenged components. I can calculate a safe trajectory, she decided, but it will strain the navigation systems. The humans exchanged looks, a silent communication that ended with Caspian's nod. Do it. Niverix's hands danced across the controls, inputting calculations that few beings in the galaxy could perform without computational assistance. As an avoreal navigator, she had been genetically enhanced to process four-dimensional equations intuitively, one gift the tribunal couldn't take from her. Phase jump plotted, all systems aligned, executing in 3, 2, 1. Reality folded around the Defiance. For a breathless moment, existence itself seemed to compress into a single point of infinite density. Then, with a violent shudder, they emerged, less than 10,000 kilometers from the avoreal observation post. We made it, Elian breathed, checking systems. Minimal damage to the secondary power couplings. But Niverix wasn't listening. Her attention was fixed on the structure ahead, and the vessels surrounding it. Those aren't observation craft, she said, horror creeping into her voice. Those are divider-class deployment ships. They're used for large-scale planetary modifications. Modifications? Caspian questioned, maneuvering the Defiance behind a small asteroid to avoid detection. Engineered climate events, tectonic destabilization, atmospheric composition adjustment. Niverix's voice grew cold. They're not here to observe. They're here to dramatically alter Earth's environment. Vox manipulated the sensor array. I'm detecting energy buildups consistent with pre-launch sequences. Whatever they're planning, it's imminent. Can we communicate with them? Elian asked. Warn them that we know what they're doing? Niverix shook her head. They would destroy this vessel without hesitation. The High Command doesn't negotiate, especially when their operations are exposed. Caspian's jaw tightened. Then we stop them directly. What are our options? The question hung in the air as Niverix studied the deployment formation. Memory and training merged as she analyzed the tactical situation. The deployment ships are synchronized through the observation post's central command node, she finally said. If we could disrupt that node, it would temporarily disable their coordination. Temporarily isn't good enough, Caspian argued. It would be if we could transmit evidence of their plans back to Earth simultaneously, Niverix countered. Your governments may be primitive, but they control enough nuclear weapons to make any invasion costly. The High Command avoids direct conflict. It's why they use subtle intervention instead. Understanding dawned on the humans' faces. You're suggesting we expose them publicly, Vox said. Force them to retreat rather than face an alerted Earth. Yes, but someone would need to board the observation post to access the command node, while the rest of us position the Defiance to broadcast their tactical plans back to Earth. Silence fell as the implications became clear. Boarding an Ivorial vessel was effectively a suicide mission, especially for the one person who would be instantly recognized as an exile. I'll go, Caspian stated flatly. No, Niverix countered immediately. You wouldn't know how to navigate Ivorial systems. It has to be me. Their eyes met across the dim cabin, illuminated by the glow of instrument panels and the distant light of Earth's sun. We need a navigator to get the Defiance back to Earth with the evidence, Caspian said softly. And you need someone who knows exactly where to plant explosives in an Ivorial command node, Niverix replied. This is my fight, Caspian. It has been since I first discovered their corruption. After tense discussion, they developed a plan. The Defiance would approach the observation post from behind, using a maintenance vector that Niverix remembered from her service days. She would board alone, sabotage the command node, and extract what data she could before returning, if possible. As she prepared the boarding gear, a suit modified to accommodate her wingless form, Caspian approached. When we met, he said quietly, you were a broken exile drinking away her sorrows. Now you're risking everything to save a world that isn't even yours. Niverix paused. Perhaps it is my world now, the only one I have left. His hand found hers, a gesture that would have been forbidden under Ivorial protocols, which considered humans a lesser species. Now it anchored her. Come back, he said simply. Navigator. The space between the Defiance and the observation post stretched before Niverix like an abyss. Propelled by a small thruster pack, she moved through the vacuum with precise adjustments, her body remembering the movements of space navigation despite the absence of her wings. The observation post loomed larger with each passing moment, a familiar architecture that once represented her home civilization's greatest achievements. Now it symbolized corruption and the callous manipulation of developing worlds. Approaching. Maintenance hatch 7, she whispered into her comm unit. No sign of exterior sensors. We're holding position, came Caspian's voice. Defiance is ready to broadcast once you secure the data. Niverix reached the hull, attaching herself with magnetic anchors. The maintenance hatch, designed for automated repair drones, was just large enough for her wingless form to squeeze through. She overrode the security protocols using command codes that should have been purged from the system when she was exiled. I'm in, she reported, slipping into a dimly lit service corridor. Moving toward central operations, the interior of the post was sparsely staffed. Niverix encountered no one as she navigated the familiar corridors. Observation posts were largely automated, requiring minimal crew. Those few Ivorials present would be in the command center, overseeing the deployment ships. She reached a junction and paused, listening. Voices echoed from an adjacent corridor, speaking. Her native language, which she hadn't heard in 5 years. Final authorization received from the tribunal, said one voice. Operation Earthfall commences in 40 minutes. Deployment ships in position, replied another. The humans will never know what hit them. Niverix pressed against the wall, anger burning through her veins. Operation Earthfall. She had seen references to it in the classified documents that led to her exile, but never the full details. Now, the name alone confirmed her worst fears. The voices faded as the Ivorials moved away. Niverix continued toward the command node, a heavily secured room at the center of the post. Her access codes wouldn't work here. She would need to force entry. The command center is manned, she whispered into her comm. 3, possibly 4 Ivorials. I'll need a distraction. We can create a small debris field near their sensor array, Elian suggested. It would trigger proximity alerts. Do it, she ordered. Minutes later, Alarms blared throughout the post. Niverix watched from concealment as 3 Avorials rushed from the command node, their magnificent wings folded tight against their backs as they hurried toward the monitoring stations. One remained inside. She would have to deal with them directly. Niverix slipped into the command node as the door hissed shut behind the departing officers. The lone Avorial at the main console looked up, startled. Then their expression transformed to shock. "Navigator Niverix?" they gasped. "You're supposed to be dead." Niverix recognized the junior officer, Talus, once her navigation apprentice. "The tribunal lied, Talus, as they've lied about many things." Talus's wings flared defensively. "You were exiled for treason, for betraying our people." "I was exiled for telling the truth," Niverix countered, moving slowly around the console. "That the High Command is manipulating Earth's development for profit. And now they're about to take more drastic action." "Operation Earthfall? What is it, Talus?" Uncertainty flickered across the young Avorial's features. "A necessary intervention. Earth's development has accelerated beyond acceptable parameters despite the pulse. The High Command authorized targeted, geological destabilization to set them back another century. They're going to trigger earthquakes and volcanic eruptions." Niverix translated, horror in her voice. "Millions will die." "Regrettable but necessary," Talus replied, though with less conviction. "The technology they're developing could threaten galactic stability." "Technology like the ship I arrived in?" Niverix challenged. "Built by humans and their allies despite all the High Command's interference?" "They're not a threat, Talus. They're proof that the galaxy is stronger with diversity of thought and approach." She gestured to her scarred back. "The High Command took my wings because I questioned their motives. Look at what they're willing to do to an entire planet that presents economic competition to their allies." Talus's hand hovered over the security alert button. "Why are you here, Navigator?" "To stop Operation Earthfall, and to expose the truth, to Earth and to our people." Niverix stepped forward. "Help me, Talus, or will you be complicit in genocide?" Long seconds passed as the junior officer's inner conflict played across their features. Finally, their hand moved away from the alert button. With Talus's help, Niverix accessed the command protocols, extracting details of Operation Earthfall and the corruption behind it. She transmitted the data to the Defiance while simultaneously uploading a virus that would temporarily disable the deployment ship's coordination systems. "The others will return soon," Talus warned. "You need to go." Niverix placed small explosives, brought from the Defiance, at key points around the command node. "These will destroy the coordination systems. It should buy Earth enough time to prepare defenses. The High Command will send more ships," Talus said, "but not before Earth knows the truth." Niverix finished setting the charges and turned to her former apprentice. "Come with me, Talus. Help me prevent more injustice." Talus's wings trembled, the Avorial equivalent of emotional distress. "I can't. My family, my position, I understand," Niverix said softly. "But when the truth reaches Luminar, remember who stood for justice." Alarm sounded. The other officers had discovered the intrusion. Niverix set the charges for remote detonation and raced back toward the maintenance hatch, Talus covering her escape by scrambling internal sensors. "I'm coming out hot," she reported to the Defiance. "Be ready for immediate departure." She reached the hatch as the first security forces rounded the corridor, their wings extended in aggressive posture. Energy weapons discharged, searing the hay. Wall beside her head as she squeezed through the opening. In space once more, Niverix activated her thruster pack at maximum capacity, launching herself toward the distant shape of the Defiance. Behind her, the observation post blazed with activity. Deployment ships breaking formation to intercept. "Detonate charges now," she ordered as she hurtled through space. The command node exploded, sending shockwaves through the observation post's systems. The deployment ships faltered, their synchronized attack patterns dissolving into chaotic individual movements. The Defiance moved to intercept her trajectory, its loading bay opening like welcoming arms. 100 meters, 50, 20. An energy blast from a security skiff struck her thruster pack, sending her tumbling off course. The Defiance grew more distant as her momentum carried her away from safety. "I can't reach you," she cried, into the comm. "Save yourselves. Get the data back to Earth." "Not without our navigator," came Caspian's determined voice. The Defiance pivoted impossibly, burning thrusters beyond safe parameters as it changed course to match her tumbling trajectory. The loading bay yawned before her again, but the security skiffs were closing fast, weapons charging. Niverix stretched her arms toward the ship, toward these humans who had given her purpose when her own people had discarded her. In that moment, she understood something profound. Wings weren't what made an Ivorial fly. It was purpose, conviction, the willingness to soar toward what was right, regardless of the cost. The Defiance's gravitational tether locked onto her suit, pulling her the final distance. She crashed onto the loading bay floor as the doors sealed behind her. The ship immediately executed a phase jump, folding space around them and vanishing from the Ivorial fleet's sensors. They emerged in Earth's orbit, the blue planet spinning serenely below them. The transmission of Operation Earthfall's details had already begun, streaming to every major government and media outlet simultaneously. Earth would know the truth. They would prepare. And the High Command's plans would be exposed not just to humanity, but to all civilizations who believed in justice. In the Defiance's cabin, Caspian helped Niverix remove her damaged spacesuit. "Earth is responding," he reported. "Military forces worldwide are on alert. The data you extracted is being analyzed by every major power." "And the High Command?" she asked. Elian checked the long-range sensors. "The deployment ships are withdrawing. Without the command node, they can't coordinate the precise strikes needed for Operation Earthfall." "They'll be back," Niverix cautioned, "but not before Earth is ready for them." Vox approached with a medical kit to treat a burn on Niverix's arm. "What happens now?" The question lingered as the Defiance descended.